You open the fridge, you scan the shelves. You're not really hungry, you're just looking. This is normal now. Snacking on demand is normal now. But for almost the entire span of human existence, that fridge didn't exist. There was no shelf. There was no guarantee. And yet your ancestors survived. Not just survived, they thrived enough to fill the planet with their descendants. So what were they actually eating? The answer is far stranger than steak and berries around a campfire. For decades, the popular image of the ancient human diet was simple. Meat, lots of meat. Big game hunted by spear-wielding men, dragged back to camp, roasted over fire. This image is everywhere. It's in documentaries, it's in diet books, it's in the name of an entire modern eating trend built around the idea of returning to how things used to be. But anthropologist Katharine Milton spent years studying the diets of wild primates and early human populations, and her research told a different story. Most calories did not come from meat at all. They came from plants, roots, tubers, fruit, nuts, insects too, more often than most people would like to admit. Meat was prized, meat was celebrated, but meat was rare. Why? Because hunting large animals with primitive tools is dangerous, it's exhausting, and it often fails. A hunt can take hours, it can take days, it can end with nothing at all. Gathering, on the other hand, is reliable. A woman digging for tubers with a sharpened stick could bring back food almost every single day. Steady calories, predictable calories, the kind of calories a growing brain actually needs. And that brings up something stranger still. Your brain is enormous. Compared to your body size, it's wildly oversized next to almost every other animal on Earth. That tissue is expensive. The human brain burns through roughly 20% of your daily energy, just sitting there, thinking, regulating, computing. So how did a species without supermarkets, without farming, without any guaranteed food source manage to fuel something that hungry? This is where the story gets genuinely strange. Richard Wrangham, a biological anthropologist at Harvard, proposed an idea that reshaped how scientists think about human evolution. He argued that cooking, not meat itself, was the true turning point. Fire didn't just keep our ancestors warm, fire broke food down before the body had to. Cooked food is easier to digest. Cooked starches unlock more usable energy. Cooked meat requires less chewing, less gut work, less wasted effort. Wrangham's hypothesis suggests that once early humans started cooking consistently, their bodies could shrink their guts and grow their brains because digestion got outsourced to fire. Think about that for a second. The thing simmering on your stove tonight is doing a version of the same trick that helped build the mind you're thinking with right now. But cooking needs ingredients, so what was actually going into the pot, or rather into the coals? This is where dental plaque becomes one of the strangest forms of time travel available to science. Researcher Amanda Henry analyzed the fossilized plaque on Neanderthal teeth, the calcified buildup that traps microscopic particles for tens of thousands of years. Inside that ancient grime, she found starch granules, cooked starch granules, from grasses, from legumes, from wild tubers similar to what would later become domesticated foods like wheat and barley. This was a revelation. Neanderthals, often imagined as pure meat-eating brutes hunting mammoths across the tundra, were also cooking plant starches. They were processing grains long before farming ever existed. So the line between wild hunter and early farmer isn't a clean line at all. It's a blur stretching back tens of thousands of years earlier than anyone assumed. What does a typical ancient meal actually look like then? Forget the campfire steak. Picture something closer to this. Roasted tubers, starchy and slightly sweet, dug up that same morning. Wild greens, bitter and fibrous, eaten almost like a side dish. Seasonal fruit when it was available, intensely sweet compared to anything wild today because sugar back then was rare and valuable. Insects and grubs, an excellent source of protein and fat, often overlooked in modern imagination, but common in the diets of foraging societies studied around the world. And occasionally, when the hunt succeeded, meat, fatty, organ-rich, deeply prized, and shared communally because one group rarely finished an entire animal alone. This diet wasn't static either. It shifted with geography. Coastal groups ate shellfish and fish, rich sources of fatty acids tied closely to brain development. Inland groups relied more heavily on roots, seeds, and whatever animals moved through their territory. There was no single paleo diet. There were hundreds of regional diets, shaped entirely by what the local landscape offered.
And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle the modern mind. Variety was survival. Eating the same thing every day was a luxury nobody had. Your ancestors' bodies evolved expecting nutritional unpredictability. Some weeks were lean, some weeks were abundant. Feast and famine weren't metaphors, they were the actual rhythm of existence. Your body still remembers that rhythm, even now. That's part of why intense cravings for fat and sugar feel so overwhelming. They aren't a personal failure of willpower. They're an ancient survival mechanism, tuned for an environment where calorie-dense food was rare and unreliable, now firing constantly in a world where that same food sits in a drive-through window 2 minutes away. The mismatch isn't your fault, it's evolutionary timing. Your biology is running software written for scarcity, installed onto hardware now living in abundance. So why does any of this matter today, beyond historical curiosity? Because the assumption that ancient humans were primarily carnivorous, while incredibly popular, oversimplifies a much more flexible and adaptable species. Humans survived not because they specialized in one food source, but because they could shift. They could eat tubers one season and fish the next. They could process tough plants with fire. They could extract nutrition from places other species couldn't even access. That flexibility is arguably humanity's real evolutionary advantage. Not strength, not speed. Adaptability of diet, paired with the cognitive flexibility to figure out new ways of getting food when the old ways stopped working. Which raises an interesting question about right now. In a world of engineered snacks and infinite variety on every shelf, what would your ancestors think of your fridge? They might recognize the instinct behind it, the hoarding of resources, the comfort of guaranteed food close at hand. That instinct is ancient, it's wired in deep, but they would not recognize the sheer constancy of it, the fact that scarcity, the defining pressure of their entire existence, has almost entirely vanished for huge parts of the modern world.
You stand in front of an open fridge tonight, not really hungry, just looking. That habit, that small, unconscious scan for available calories, is a few 100,000 years old. It just used to be necessary. Now it's mostly just a memory your body hasn't updated yet.